My name is Fraser Simons. I'm going to be talking about Vita Nostra, a science fiction fantasy book that is translated by Julia Hersey into English from Ukrainian about 2 years ago. The second book is out now too. I have not read that yet, but this book is one of my favorites, as you can tell from the tabbing, which is excessive. It's the first book that I've ever read where I finished it and I felt like I got about 85% of what was going on, and so I immediately reread it, started tabbing, started annotating. I am pretty certain that I've got everything, but because it is translated and there's some colloquialisms and some cultural things that I'm not quite sure of, I probably won't ever be 100% sure of it, just because there's those cultural things that probably work as a metaphor and motif that I'm not aware of. But what I did get out of it, I quite enjoyed. So what is this book about? This is a science fiction fantasy book that leads towards dark fantasy, but is intersectional with science fiction as well. There's a good mix of it. There is some strange metaphysics stuff going on. There's even some nerdiness with grammar and language being learned at the school, so it's hard to pinpoint, which is one of the reasons why it makes it so good. The main character's name is Sasha. She is a 16-year-old girl when we first meet her at the beginning of part 1. There's 3 parts. She is on vacation with her mother at some sort of coastal place. Not quite a resort, but it's more swanky than what they can generally afford, is what it's implied. On vacation, she meets a strange man who every time she runs away from and is struck with like this sheer terror of the way that he looks and the way that he looks at her, she finds that she keeps reawakening in a looped dream of the same day until she finally does speak to him. And he gives her these strange tasks that she's supposed to complete that seem nonsensical, sort of like a hero's journey type quest in like old fantasy stuff, where they just have to go do things that they don't understand until eventually they do understand it. Sort of like Sword in the Stone, stuff like that, where he's learning strange lessons. In this, after she completes the task, one of which, for instance, is waking up at 4 a.m., or sorry, not waking up at 4 a.m., but swimming to a buoy out in the water at precisely 4 a.m., so waking up earlier than that. And once she completes these tasks, she throws up gold coins that she later uses as currency at the magical school, to which she is sent by this new person that comes into her life, her advisor or mentor. And basically the world sort of conspires, assuming, we can assume as readers, that the advisor is the one manipulating world circumstances to make her go to this school. She doesn't get into the university program that she wants to get into, and she is made to forcibly go to this school against her will, against her mother's will. It's out in the sort of like boonies or something like that. And everyone at the school apparently has an advisor, and everyone is coerced into going to this academic school called the Institute of Technology. So right away you can tell it's leaning towards more dark fantasy. It's not a lighthearted romp. There's definitely mature themes. There's content warnings that I would put on this for coercive rape, coercive relationships in general. There's very strange dynamics at play that take away the agency of the characters. But I will say that it is done for a reason. It is not for shock value or genre conventions. The ways in which the characters are oppressed or subjugated, essentially, is for a specific plot reason. And it is also actually commenting on academia itself. So If you are in academia right now, this might be a little bit triggering for you, potentially. But it's definitely trying to interrogate societal norms, the way in which we socialize our young, and other situations like that in order to make a point. That isn't the ultimate point of the book, though, which is basically all we know as a reader is as much as Sasha knows herself, which is she goes to some classes that are normal, like physical education, English, and I think some science and stuff like that. Core subjects that you would be, okay, this makes a little bit of sense. But there's also the main class, which is the specialty class or speciality, and that's where they learn sort of what the Institute is about, except that in the books they can't make heads or tails of what they are reading. So you really are in a situation as a reader where you are trying to figure out this complex and intricate puzzle just as Sasha is, and it takes her years to unravel it. Though it is paced out quite well and somewhat generously in the text with the pacing. And so a lot of what you get as the satisfaction from this book is the reading experience and figuring out what is going on. And of course, what you're unraveling is essentially the magic system of the actual book. So if I told you what it was, then I would be spoiling it. So for now, I'm just going to stick to a summary and why you should read this book. And then afterwards, I will tell you exactly what I think has happened and how I interpret the magic school system and whatnot. So basically, over the course of the years, Sasha learns what is going on with the magic school system and the nature of her advisor and some of the other teachers, which are off kilter and different than normal people. It's also a big on themes of coming of age. Sasha herself develops just as though she is developing along with the complex problem. She undergoes like a transformative experience in the things that she encounters at school, like falling in love and meeting other people, and what learning feels like for her, which feels kind of like being brainwashed or reprogrammed, being forced into a box that society is placing her in. So it's a very interesting book. Quite different than Harry Potter. So when people say this book is like The Magicians or like Harry Potter, the only way in which it is like that is that there is a magical boarding school, and that is it. There is some overlap, I guess, with The Magicians, but only half of that book is a magic school trope anyway. And the learning process for magic in Lev Grossman is kind of similar, where it's all like very strange, intricate processes that somebody has figured out and you have to duplicate, and it takes a lot of learned skills to get good at the magic, basically. Except this is even more subjective than that. Every person is quite different. The magic is nothing I've ever seen before. It's very interesting, very cool. It syncs up with the world building perfectly. The book as itself works as numerous metaphors, not the least of which is the academia, but the transformative nature of coming into your own power, looking for your own agency in the world and trying to discern it in a place that basically just makes you want to crumble down into a mold of just another worker bee, like a salaryman or an ant or whatever kind of metaphor you want to use for people who go 9 to 5 in jobs. It's quite intricate. The prose are very good. They're not Hemingway-esque, but they're straightforward. They're a little bit more flowery in terms of description, which I think is excellent. The translator, Marina, did an excellent job with this. There's very good verbiage and diction, and it all works together very well. I didn't notice any weird stilted dialogue, which is what normally would happen with translated works, typically. And it's just a really interesting tale. It is heavily internal world character-wise, though. So if you are the type of person that likes a lot of characters always interacting, like Harry Potter type stuff, I'm trying to remember if The Magicians was like that. Kind of, not really. He was always bouncing against other people to try to reveal his character. This is kind of like that. You do get more of a sense of what Sasha is like versus what she perceives herself as, but that's sort of just the nature of first-person narratives as far as I'm concerned. It's got some jargon when explaining the tools of the magic system and the revelations about the world they were in, but all of the jargon and the hard stuff that you encounter, like grammar and metaphysics and really hyper-specific stuff, granular things that you wouldn't really expect probably in a dark fantasy fiction, even though it is mature. All of that stuff gets repackaged into dialogue and other small info dumps that curate the content into what exactly you need to know, as long as you're paying attention. I made the mistake of, at first, sort of glossing over all of the really intricate details in thinking that it was sort of just fluff to make it seem more competent or more lend some authenticity for the professors who are always operating on like another level than the students. They often don't tell them what is going on because they literally say that they won't understand at this time, and in a very condescending type of way. So I felt like that was just a thematic component, but it's not. All of it is extremely important, as you can see. I tracked plot details, I tracked character progression, transformative moments, nice turns of phrase that I liked. There's all of it all of the time. The longer tabs is the more important things that happen in the fiction, if you're wondering. And yeah, so I think that's about all I can say about it. I highly recommend it, of course. I rated it 5 stars twice. I read it in, I think, like 4 or 5 days. I read it twice, something like that. I went through it in like a day initially, and then I took my time with it for another 4 days, I believe. So it's excellent. I highly suggest that you pick it up, especially because selfishly I want the entire trilogy to come out, and they have said that it is based on how well the first book and the second book perform. Both books are at Book Outlet right now too, so you can pick them up cheap, even as I did. I didn't even know what they were. I just saw a really cool cover and just decided to go for it, and now it's one of my favorite books of all time, without a doubt. So now let's get into spoilers. I think some people that will come to this video is probably just wanting an explanation of what the heck happened in this actual story. I will link below to the review that I did on Medium that will be out in a couple days, as well as the spoiler, not review, but I guess a summary. It's just what I think happened in the book. It's highly subjective, so take it with a grain of salt and just use it to inform your opinion after you read the book yourself. But I think what I think happened makes sense to me. So we'll see. Essentially, the world, this is big spoilers, so don't watch it if you want to figure out what is going on in the book, which is one of the highlights of reading the book, is unraveling this as you read it, okay? So being warned, I will start now. The world is comprised literally of language. And the people that are going to the school are transforming into words, literal words, in the language of the universe. And what this means is when they self-actualize and transform into the words that they are, then when they self-actualize, they literally change the world. They put their own selfhood embedded into the world, and it is changed. Everybody else in the world is sort of like the grammar of the world, so everyone's like brackets, punctuation marks, periods in the language of the world. There's the story of the world that is unfolding right now. Time is a grammatical concept in the book. And so when you learn how to write in the language of the world and essentially transition from a human being of raw potential into whatever you are meant to be in the actual language of the world, which is a completely separate entity, the final exams of the school is you self-actualizing into the word that you are. This is explained as being an instrument of speech, is what happens. You become an instrument of speech. So other characters are put into a hierarchy, essentially. Sasha, as we come to know her, is a very high up there. She is a verb in the imperative mood. There are verbs in the subjunctive mood. There are adverbs, there are nouns, but essentially the people at the school are like more important words. So things that are more important but still on a hierarchy, but all of them are meant to self-actualize and change the world in some way, which goes along with the metaphor. University teaches you how to think literally in this book, and when you learn how to think, you become something else, you self-actualize, and you can actually change the world. So I think that's pretty interesting. It works on both levels. And so you can see how satisfying it would be to conjoin the sort of literalization of the academic metaphor along with the actual story and the plot of what is unfolding. They work in tandem. The writers have said that they wrote this when their own daughter was going to university, that she was just about to head off or something like that. Makes total sense. Importantly, the advisor is essentially the embodiment of fear. He is the word, he is the command of fear, which is why he is able to change so many circumstances in the world in order to make the kids do what the teachers and what he wants. He believes that no student would, left to their own devices, would just go and learn this stuff. Sasha says, if you were just kind to me, if you were nice, if you were pleasant, said you loved me, all of those kind of things, I would work just as hard. And he does not believe that. He thinks that fear is a fundamental component to humans in order to drive them to the school, do the work, and change into a word and then self-actualize. He doesn't imagine a world where that can't happen. And Sasha is the antithesis of this. Her word that is kind of foreshadowed in it is harmony, but it seems more like love. When she self-actualizes, she's able to perceive her advisor as what he is, and he commands her using fear to reverberate, which is self-actualizing as a word. And she says no, because she knows that in her sort of upbringing at the academy and in her experiences with her advisor, fear is ingrained in her so deeply that if she were to reverberate with love, it would have an undercurrent of fear, thus ensuring that her advisor in this new world, this act of creation, would still be around. He, as the embodiment of fear, at least as I infer him to be, is ensuring his own place. And in fact, that's why before the exam, he even offers to let Sasha out of the exam, and using the same method that I mentioned at the start of this video, in which she's stuck in a dream loop. He said that he can do this and take it all back when she was about to take her university exam, and she could retake the exam, get into the university that she was hoping for. None of this would happen. So the complexity grows from there, because the person that she is in love with at the school, the son of the embodiment of fear, has said that his purpose is to occupy the shell of the father once he is gone. So we can infer that if Sasha does reverberate and create a world without fear, and it destroys the advisor, supposedly, if that's what happened, there's numerous foreshadowing throughout that her and the son, more than anything, want to self-actualize in a way that destroys their advisor, because they don't agree with the way that he is, coercing everybody. Makes sense, right? Right before the exam, he talks with Sasha, and he says that he knows his purpose is to occupy the shell of the father when he's dead, so maybe her work is not yet done, and so who knows what will happen with the subsequent books. I don't think the next books have the same characters, though. I'm told they're sort of like loosely connected in a universe type of way, but the characters are not necessarily brought over, but I don't know. I haven't read either of them. And so that's where the subjectivity comes in for the ending. There's numerous ways that you can interpret it. At the very end, she calls her mother through a phone line after actually reverberating, confronting her fear, confronting the advisor, and reverberating with only love without fear. She calls her mother, says everything's all right now, and is sort of like a peripheral entity that is able to reconstruct her human form later, but not yet. So maybe those forces in the lovers with love and fear might clash again later on. Who knows? But we know that people who have already self-actualized as words can be perceived as human beings, just like her advisor, just like a couple of her teachers are. Maybe all of them are. I can't remember, but I think at least 2 or 3 of them are. And one of them wasn't even ever human whatsoever. Their purpose as a word was just to fulfill their guidance at the school. So what else? Oh yeah, the final thing is the gold coins. What are the gold coins, right? Anytime there's inner turmoil with any of the kids, they throw up, and there's gold coins with the symbol on it, which we learn is word. And basically, all of these coins can be described as the resurfacing of a human. As they are being transformed into a word, they are deconstructed and then reconstructed throughout the year, and then the transition is the last phase. But as that all is happening, they have inner turmoil that's generated, and these words are like the sanding down of a statue in order to create their shape. It's just the byproduct of them shirking their humanness, their humanity, into their word form. And they're like unused words that are coming out of them in order to find the actual word that they are. It's just a refinement process. And that's it. I think I've explained as much as I can, or at least what is pertinent, I think. If you've read the book, feel free to correct me in the comments if you think I'm wrong. Let me know if you have other questions, and I'll try to answer them. If you read the book, I would love to know what you thought of it. I'm always looking for other opinions on things. I absolutely, of course, love the book, but if you have any criticisms or anything like that, feel free to let me know. With the caveat that if you are going to spoil anything, please mark it in the comments so that people aren't going through and seeing this stuff. I also have my Goodreads and my Medium linked below, so check me out there, connect with me if you'd like, and I'll see you later.